Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for an album review. Foxygen. We are the 21st century masters ambassadors of peace and magic. Foxygen is the singing, songwriting duo, multi-instrumentalist duo of Jonathan Rado and Sam France. I fell in love with them, or their music rather, last year when I heard the reissue of this, Take the Kids Off Broadway, which I guess at the time I thought was an EP. I put it on my favorite EPs list of last year, but I guess this is their new album, but it's about as long as this EP. It's kind of confusing. And my love of this had me psyched to listen to this, mostly because of this is a very spontaneous mix of influences coming from a whole slew of artists who made great music during the 60s and 70s. Eric Burdon and the Animals, David Bowie, The Kinks, Rolling Stones, Lou Reed, and many more. Foxygen would just bunny hop from one sound to another with like no warning whatsoever, but still come out in the end with some really great and kind of cohesive and ambitious songs that had a really interesting song structure or arc to them. Now, as far as 21st Century goes, this album still sees Foxygen being a very kind of nostalgic project, with flashes of inspiration coming from the previously mentioned artists, as well as guys like Dylan on this LP, or Phil Spector, maybe even a little bit of rockabilly. But I feel like this time around, Jonathan and France are kind of subtracting the spontaneity and not really jumping around as ferociously as they used to. The songs on this LP no longer sound like three different artists alternating on a single song. To me, the songs on this new LP are much more about focus, cohesion, and really kind of fleshing out a single idea instead of developing some sort of crafty detour, which is certainly a risk. I mean, having the whole detour thing there is really fun. It's kind of distracting, but I will say that in this new version of Foxygen songwriting style, they have seen success. They've pretty much on this LP brought a mixed bag of some very nicely written tracks that are a lot of fun and have kind of a vintage veneer to them. I guess outside of that, I'm not really seeing any sort of huge theme or arc or concept to all these tracks together, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do think they work together relatively well. It just doesn't really, I guess, have that gigantic punch that I would want from an album in general, but still, I feel like 21st Century Foxygen is still making LPs that are a little too short to maybe kind of bring that impact. Still, there are many, many highlights on this thing, track for track for track, like the song No Destruction, which has a really smoky, saloon-worthy kind of folk rock flavor to it. I love the production on this track, and much of the album, it has a strong 60s vibe to it. It's really vintage, just like their last project, but is way more clear than Take the Kids Off Broadway. I love the lazy, kind of apathetic vocals on the verses on this track. They are kind of pained, somewhat ambivalent too. They sort of go crazy, a little nutty. They act out very, I guess, flamboyantly as they're singing about smoking pot in the subway. And I love the way the pace kind of picks up on the chorus. I mean, if there's one thing that Foxygen is just consistent about with every single one of these tracks, they bring a nice contrast between the verses and the choruses. The choruses all speed up, they burst, they grow, they just really flower, blossom. It's a really swanky jam, and I love the ending on this track too. Foxygen writes a lot of tight endings for these songs as well. This one in particular has some nice harmonica. The song On Blue Mountain, the way the song continually kind of picks up speed as it goes along, it feels like racing up a mountain. There's just more sound and detail as we go up. The bass line kind of locks in with the kick drum, which is attached to a beat that is very snappy. I love the falsetto background vocals, I need it, I need it, and the way the chorus kind of crashes in with all these pianos and cymbals. Living in the sunset. I love the freaking melody on this damn chorus, as well as many others on here. And the way the song suddenly slows down as it goes back into the verse and then kicks back in toward the ending, getting more intense, kind of psychedelic. It's a good track. The song San Francisco, I mean, 2 words, love, Lee. Impossible not to sing along with this freaking chorus. I was born in LA. And what is that pretty plinky sound on this song? Is that a glockenspiel? There's just some really pretty chords on this song. And the way the melody on the intro sort of bounces around, flutters about like a butterfly. But in the piano, especially before the chorus with the chords that is being played, there's kind of a sinister undertone to this song. As well as many other songs on here, mostly I feel through the kind of weird, somewhat absurdist lyrics. Sometimes I pick up some themes of religion, sometimes I pick up some themes of war. The song Shuggy, another extremely infectious chorus, and I love the intro melody. There are some keyboards on this track that feel like a mellotron, a woodwind as well, and the title track on here is extremely rowdy. I think kind of hilarious, with the title of the song being kind of repeated over and over and over and over in a way that, I mean, it's so long it's kind of impossible to be catchy, so it's sort of repeated or vocalized in this kind of wacky, zany, aggressive Iggy Pop kind of way. Which is kind of a surprise because when the vocals on this LP do get aggressive, they usually resemble much more of a, I guess, sort of Mick Jagger kind of thing. But the song just gets kind of more speedy and more ruthless as it moves on. And the final track here, Oh No 2, which to me is a great closer, has kind of this space oddity sort of vibe to it, and these William Shatner-like spoken word interjections that I like quite a bit, and the closing piano ballad on this track is stellar as well. I mean, really, the Unicorns influence pours out on this track, specifically like a guy like Alden Penner. I see him having a lot of influence on what Sam and Jonathan do. The only songs on here I really kind of fault are the short, just 1 minute track that has kind of a rockabilly thing going on that I like, but I wish it was longer. The intro track on here that I like how it exploded with the huge background vocals that had a lot of reverb on them, but I wish it was longer. And the song Oh Yeah had a really great chorus to it, but to me the verses just had way too many kind of, I guess, sort of rock cliches. Yeah, there are quite a few of them on this album, but that one just had too many to handle, and just some really weak lyrics too. Again, my only main issues with this LP is that I wish it was longer, and I wish the songs connected, I guess, in a more obvious or strongly conceptual way. I mean, really that's it. I think Foxygen is on a really good progression with this album, focusing more on that songwriting than those detours, as I've already said, with a lot of great choruses, melodies, stellar production, and a vintage flavor, but still they've maintained enough kind of eccentricity, enough strangeness to feel modern, new, and kind of weirdly fresh. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this LP if you've given it a listen. What did you think? Love it, hate it, why? What should I review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Foxygen, forever.